So you are an artist and a storyteller, and you made a really radical and awesome film about a sacred text and how people relate to it and wrestle with it. And I'd be curious, why Leap of Faith?
You know, I met Michael Gulker, who was a Mennonite pastor, a former pastor, grew up CRC in Grand Rapids, and has committed himself to this ministry of reconciliation, really focused within congregations, and then was curious about what that ministry of reconciliation could look like more broadly within a community, within the church as a whole, within Christianity as a faith. And I was just fascinated by the earnestness and ambition combined. You know, it's not bravado, it's this ambition to say, no, I hold this really deeply. And I'm also really sincere about it. And to me, something about ambition and sincerity in Michael reminded me of the ambition and sincerity of Fred Rogers, right? Who's like, oh yeah, I'm going to take my ministry to television and this brand new medium and talk to kids very sincerely, and that's going to be okay, and that's going to work. It's also perplexing, and I found myself drawn to that, and we spoke for about 2 years. And when he came up with this idea of bringing these pastors together, I just felt like, I don't know if there is a movie here, and no one around me is telling me that there is, but I will regret not exploring it and not sort of walking with these folks in that journey. And yeah.
So for our listeners who may not have seen the movie, please tell our audience a bit about the movie.
Sure. So it's about, this dream that Michael has of bringing pastors together for a year to see if they can really belong to each other across vast differences, vast theological differences, racial differences, socioeconomic differences, sexuality comes up, all of the questions that bedevil us in our world, or the differences that bedevil us in our ability to belong to each other. And they commit to spending a year to figure that out. And it starts off with all of the sort of niceties that you might expect of, Midwest pastor saying, oh, good to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And quickly, these pastors are engulfed by this challenge of what differences are too great to even speak about, right? And one of the differences that really ends up taking center stage is around sexuality and an inability to have the language to talk to each other and to love each other and to be present with each other. And it engulfs Michael's personal life. It engulfs the lives of these pastors. And I remember midway through thinking, I don't see an ending for this that feels satisfying. It doesn't feel like if anyone wins or loses, that doesn't feel satisfying. It all just feels sort of dreary, which is, I think, sometimes how I feel about the world right now, that it all just feels sort of dreary and awful. And somehow in their patience and their forbearance, they do discover a way of being together that I couldn't see before. I don't think they could see before. And I'm so grateful that that's the movie that emerged, because it is the sense of possibility that I needed in that time, and maybe others need now too.
I loved the film. They worked out relationality and connection and compassion and respect across differences. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh yeah, we found a solution or started a new denomination or wrote a new creed, but we figured out how to be human together despite all this. And I think that might be one of the biggest longings and invitations of our time, is how can we be human and be connected across the vast and seemingly increasing differences amongst us.
Michael in the film at one point says, what I want to say is, you be who you are, I'll be who I am, and we'll get through this together. And I think right now we only believe two of those things at the most, right? We kind of think either you have to change, I have to change, or we're going to go our separate ways. And I think to believe all three of them is this act of faith that somehow those three things can be true together. I don't know if we can know in advance how those things can be true together. And I think it's I think it's the mistake that all of us get into when we get married, where we think, oh, good, we're on the same team. And you realize, oh no, there are just parts of your spouse that are just profoundly different, that don't work the way that you do. And how do you embrace that without losing who you are? Or how do they embrace who you are without losing who they are? And how do you go through it together? And that's sort of, to me, the beauty of that commitment of marriage, is to sort of say, oh gosh, that's what we have to believe, that somehow those three things can be true. But, it's not an easy thing for us to believe in general.